Welcome to World War II Stories for Sleep. Tonight, there is nothing urgent for you to do. There is nowhere you need to go, and nothing you need to solve before the morning. For the next little while, you can simply settle back, let your body become comfortable, and allow this quiet story to move around you slowly, like snow falling through the dark branches of an old winter forest. This is not a story of battle. This is not a story of noise or danger or sudden movement. This is a story from the quiet edge of history, from one of those long winter nights when the world outside was uncertain, but inside small rooms, forest huts, field shelters, and sleeping villages, ordinary people still found warmth, still made tea, still folded blankets, still lowered their voices so others could rest. Tonight, we travel to the Ardennes, not to the loud places, not to the front of the storm, but to the stillness beneath it, to a snow-covered forest at midnight, to dark fir trees holding white snow on their branches, to a narrow road disappearing between frozen trunks, to a small stone village with shuttered windows, warm lamps, and smoke rising slowly from chimneys, to a quiet field post where tired men sit under wool blankets, listening to the soft ticking of a stove, to an old wooden table with a map spread across it, not as a symbol of strategy, but as a simple object under lamplight, with a pencil beside it, a metal cup of coffee cooling near the edge, and gloves drying slowly near the fire. The war exists in the distance, as history, as weather, as a pressure beyond the trees. But here, in this story, the foreground is calm. The foreground is human. The foreground is breath, snow, wool, wood smoke, candlelight, and the long patience of people waiting for morning. So let your shoulders soften. Let your jaw loosen. Let your hands rest. You do not need to force sleep. You do not need to chase it. You only need to listen as much or as little as you want. The words can be followed, or they can simply become a soft sound in the room. If you drift away, the story will continue gently. If you return, it will still be here, moving slowly through the winter night. Imagine now that the modern room around you grows quieter. The light becomes dimmer. The edges of the day begin to fade, and somewhere far away in time, beyond the noise of the present, beyond the roads and screens and bright electric hours, there is a forest under snow. It is midnight in the Ardennes. The sky's heavy and low. The moon is hidden behind clouds, but its pale light still finds the snow and gives it a faint blue glow. The trees stand close together, tall and dark, their branches holding the weight of winter. The air is cold enough that every breath becomes visible for a moment and then disappears. A narrow road winds through the forest covered in packed snow, marked only by old tyre tracks, boot prints, and the dark lines where wheels have pressed through to the frozen earth below. Nothing moves quickly here. Nothing asks to be hurried. The forest has slowed the whole world down. Even sound has become softer. A branch shifts under the weight of snow, and a little powder falls to the ground with a whisper. Somewhere far away, wind moves through the trees, but by the time it reaches this road, it is only a low, tired murmur. There may be distant sounds beyond the hills, the kind of sounds that belong to the larger history of the winter, but here they are softened by miles of forest, by snowfall, by darkness, by the thick quiet of the Ardennes at night. They do not enter this story sharply. They remain far away, like weather beyond a closed window. Here, close to us, there is only the road, the trees, the snow, and the slow breath of winter. Along the road, half hidden beneath the branches, a small stone building sits at the edge of the forest. It might once have been a forester's hut, or a storage room, or a roadside shelter used by villagers before the war. Its roof is steep and heavy with snow. Its walls are made of old stone darkened by age and cold. A little smoke rises from the chimney and drifts sideways, then disappears into the night. One window is covered from within, but a thin line of amber light escapes around the edge of the curtain. The light is small, it does not travel far, but in the surrounding darkness it seems deeply warm. Inside the hut the air is warmer, though not truly warm in the easy way of a comfortable house. It is the careful warmth of a small stove doing its best against a large winter night. The stove sits in one corner, black iron, practical, and slightly uneven from years of use. A low fire glows inside it, not bright, not roaring, only steady. The metal ticks softly as it heats and cools. A kettle rests nearby, giving off a faint thread of steam. Gloves hang from a line above the stove, stiff with dampness but softening slowly. 2 wool coats are draped over the backs of chairs. A pair of boots waits near the door, snow melting from their soles into a shallow pan. The room smells of wood smoke, wet wool, leather, coffee, old paper, and cold air that has entered too many times through the door. A small table stands near the centre of the room. On it lies a folded map, its edges curling slightly from dampness. Beside the map are a pencil, a pocket notebook, a stub of candle, a tin plate, and 2 enamel mugs. 1 mug is empty. The other still holds a little dark coffee, gone lukewarm. A lamp hangs from a nail in the wall, shaded carefully so its light stays low. The lamp gives the room its amber centre. Around that centre, shadows gather in the corners, soft and deep. The shadows are not frightening. They are the kind of shadows that belong to old rooms at night, when everything is still and every object seems to have settled into its place. A man sits at the table, not fully awake and not asleep, simply resting in the space between the two. His name is Thomas, though the story does not need to use his name often. He is ordinary in all the ways that matter. He's not a figure from a monument. He's not a symbol. He's a tired young clerk attached to a supply unit, given a night of waiting in a forest hut with a small stove, a notebook, a map, and instructions that are mostly routine. He has a wool coat over his shoulders and a scarf loosened at his neck. His hands are wrapped around a mug, not because the coffee is good, but because the mug is warm enough to be worth holding. His face is calm in the lamplight, a little pale from cold, a little drawn from tiredness, but calm. Across from him, another man named Ellis sleeps on a bench against the wall, wrapped in a blanket with his cap pulled low over his forehead. His boots remain on, though loosened. 1 arm rests across his chest. His breathing is slow and even. Every now and then he shifts slightly, and the bench gives a soft wooden creak. Thomas glances toward him only to make sure he's still asleep, then looks back at the stove. It is part of the kindness of the night to let a sleeping man remain asleep. Outside, the forest is vast and cold. Inside, the hut is small and dim. The contrast makes the room feel safer. Not safe in the grand sense, not safe from history, but safe enough for this hour. Safe enough for lowered voices, safe enough for warm cups, safe enough for one man to sleep while another keeps the small watch. The stove ticks, the kettle whispers. Snow presses gently against the window frame. A drop of melted ice falls from the boots into the pan near the door. The sound is small, almost nothing. But in a quiet room at midnight, almost nothing becomes part of the music. Thomas breathes in slowly and smells smoke. He breathes out and sees a faint cloud in the colder part of the room, near the door. The stove cannot warm every corner evenly. The far wall remains cold. The floor remains cold. The stones hold winter inside them. But near the table and stove there is a pocket of warmth, and that pocket is enough. A person learns to value pockets of warmth during winter. A hand around a mug, a dry pair of socks, a wool blanket folded double, a little space near the fire, a lamp that does not smoke too much, a chair that does not wobble. Enough. The word belongs to the room. Enough heat, enough light, enough coffee, enough quiet, enough time before morning. Thomas opens the notebook and looks at the last line he wrote. The writing is small, plain, and careful. A time, a note about the road, a note about 2 men passing earlier with a cart and a tired horse, a note about Snowfall beginning again. Nothing dramatic, nothing that would mean much to anyone far away. But the page holds the night in small pieces, and sometimes small pieces are all a person can carry. He lifts the pencil. The pencil is short and worn at one side where it has been sharpened with a knife. The smell of wood rises faintly when he touches it. He writes the next time. Then he pauses, listening. Not because he expects anything, only because listening becomes a habit in a forest at night. The hut is quiet. The sleeping man breathes. The stove ticks. The wind touches the roof. A soft branch outside releases snow, then quiet again. Thomas writes, "Snow steady." The words are simple. He sets the pencil down. He does not need to write more. The road outside the hut leads down through the trees toward a small Ardennes village. In daylight, the village might show itself clearly. Stone houses, slate roofs, a little church with a modest steeple, a square where carts once stopped, a few narrow lanes, a well, a bakery, a shuttered schoolhouse, and gardens buried now beneath snow. But at midnight, the village is only a cluster of shapes under white roofs. Most windows are dark. Some are covered carefully with heavy curtains or cloth, letting no light out. A few chimneys breathe faint smoke. A lantern glows behind one stable door. The church bell does not ring. The street is silent. Snow lies along the walls, on the steps, on the windowsills, on the stones around the well. The village sleeps as much as it can. Inside one house, an old woman wakes for a moment and listens to the night. She has lived long enough to know many kinds of silence. This one is winter silence, forest silence, wartime silence too, but that part is only one thread in the weave. She pulls the blanket higher and turns toward the wall, where the stones hold a little warmth from the fire that burned earlier. On the table downstairs, a loaf of dark bread is wrapped in cloth. A kettle waits near the stove. A pair of spectacles rests on a folded letter. A small candle has been blown out. The house settles around her. Wood contracts in the cold. A shutter moves slightly. Somewhere in the stable, an animal shifts and grows still again. The old woman closes her eyes. The village returns to sleep. Farther along the lane, in another house, two children sleep under heavy blankets in a bed pushed close to the wall. Their mother has placed coats over the blankets for extra warmth. A low fire has become embers. The room smells of ash, wool, and dried herbs hanging from a beam. Outside the window, snow collects on the sill. The children know little of maps and movements beyond the hills. They know the cold, the dark, the sound of adults speaking softly, and the comfort of being near each other beneath heavy covers. Their breathing rises and falls together. In the attic above them, the wind moves softly under the roof tiles, but not enough to wake them. On the village street, the snow continues to fall. Not hard, not in a storm, only steadily, softly, as if the sky has decided to speak in whispers. Each flake lands without weight, on roofs, on branches, on fence posts, on a parked cart, on the shoulders of dark fir trees, on the narrow road leading back to the forest hut. The snow does not choose sides. It covers everything. It softens everything. It makes the hard edges of the world less sharp. The Ardennes Forest receives it silently. The road becomes paler. The wheel tracks become shallower. The boot prints begin to blur. History leaves marks everywhere, but snow has always had a talent for making marks gentle for a while. Inside the hut, Thomas notices the snow thickening against the lower edge of the window. He stands slowly, careful not to scrape the chair too loudly. Ellis remains asleep on the bench. Thomas crosses the room and lifts one corner of the curtain only a little. Cold touches his fingers immediately. Through the small gap he sees the blue darkness of the forest, the pale ground, and the faint shapes of falling snow. The trees stand close. Their branches are heavy. Nothing moves on the road. The world outside looks almost unreal in its stillness. He lets the curtain fall back into place. The room becomes amber again. The cold at his fingertips lingers. He returns to the table and warms his hand around the mug. The coffee is nearly cold now. He drinks it anyway. Cold coffee is not pleasant, but it is familiar. It has the taste of long hours, the taste of waiting, the taste of being awake when others sleep. He makes a small face, then smiles at himself because there is no one awake to see. He sets the mug down. The stove gives a little tick. Ellis exhales and turns slightly under the blanket. Thomas sits again. There are nights when nothing happens, and those are the nights a person remembers strangely well. Not because of events, but because of details. The way the lamp smoked for a moment and then cleared. The way wet gloves sagged on a line. The way snowlight made the window glow around the edges of the curtain. The way a sleeping friend's breathing made the room feel less empty. The way a pencil rolled toward the map and stopped against a folded corner. The way the stove seemed alive, not with flame alone, but with patience. Thomas does not think of all this as memory yet. He is still inside it. But someday perhaps the smell of damp wool or the sound of a kettle beginning to steam will bring this hut back to him. Not the war in full, not the maps, only the room, the stove, the snow, the sleeping man on the bench, the amber circle of lamplight, the feeling of being very tired and still continuing quietly. He reaches for the kettle and pours a little hot water into the empty mug. The water is not boiling, it is only hot enough. He adds a little coffee from a tin, too little for real strength, but enough to darken the water. The spoon makes one soft circle inside the mug. He stops before it can clink again. The smell rises, thin but warm. He wraps both hands around the mug and lets the steam touch his face. Outside, the snow keeps falling. A little farther down the forest road, a truck stands half covered beneath a line of trees. It has been parked there for hours, its engine cold, its tyres pressed into snow, its canvas cover stiff with frost. No one is near it now. It is only a shape in the winter dark. Snow gathers on the hood. A branch above it bends slowly under the weight. The truck has no role in this quiet moment except to be still. Even machines, when the night is deep enough, seem to sleep. Past the truck, the road turns, descends, and disappears between dark trunks. The forest is not empty, but it feels empty. It holds hidden paths, old charcoal pits, stone walls, animal tracks, and memories older than the war. The Ardennes has known many winters. It has known hunters moving before dawn, woodcutters with axes, children gathering berries in summer, carts creaking under loads of timber, pilgrims, storms, fog, and centuries of quiet growth. The war is one winter among many, terrible in the larger world, but not enough to make the forest forget how to be a forest. The trees still stand, the snow still falls, the streams still move beneath ice, owls still pass silently from branch to branch, roots still hold the dark earth. At midnight, this older rhythm can be felt beneath the human one. Thomas, in the hut, senses it only as stillness. A stillness larger than the room, larger than the road, larger than the map. He looks at the map again and sees lines, names, distances, ridges, roads, villages, streams, useful things, necessary things. But outside the map, the real forest does not feel like lines. It feels like weight, darkness, breath, and snow. He folds the map slightly to keep it from curling into the lamp flame. The paper is worn at the creases. A corner has been repaired with a strip of tape. There are pencil marks from earlier in the day, some clear, some smudged. He does not study them long. This story does not need strategy. It does not need explanation. The map is here as an object in the night. Paper under lamplight, a record of roads beneath falling snow, a surface where a tired hand can rest. Thomas places his palm flat on the table beside it. The wood is cold where the lamp does not reach. He moves his hand closer to the mug. War has a way of making people think of distance. Miles to a town, miles to a supply point, miles to a ridge, miles to a river, miles to home. But a winter night in a small hut makes distance shrink. The whole world becomes the table, the stove, the door, the window, the sleeping bench, and the few feet of floor between them. The next necessary thing is small. Keep the fire alive, let Ellis sleep, write the time, listen to the snow, drink the coffee before it cools completely. Small things, manageable things, things a tired person can do. A sound comes from outside, soft, not threatening, only the faint crunch of snow settling from a branch. Thomas looks toward the door. He waits. The sound does not repeat. The sleeping man does not wake. The stove ticks again. Thomas lets his shoulders lower. In a forest at night, a person learns not to give every sound a story. Some sounds are only snow. Some are only wood. Some are only the old hut adjusting to cold. He returns to the notebook and writes nothing. The empty space on the page is peaceful. Not every minute needs a record. Not every thought needs a sentence. He closes the notebook halfway, leaving the pencil inside as a marker. The lamp gives a small tremble. He adjusts the wick carefully, making the flame lower and steadier. The room darkens slightly. The shadows grow thicker, but softer too. This lower light is better for the sleeping man, better for the hour, better for the story. Ellis breathes in, breathes out, and settles deeper. Thomas watches the flame for a while. A lamp flame is never still. It leans, gathers, shrinks, rises, steadies. But compared to the world outside, it is calm. Its small movements are almost like breathing. Thomas lets his own breathing follow it. In, out, a slight lift, a soft fall. The chair beneath him is hard, but he has grown used to it. His boots are cold at the toes, but less cold than before. His hands are warm enough around the mug. Again, enough. The night is made of enough. Enough fire, enough light, enough silence, enough patience, enough trust that morning will come whether one watches the clock or not. In the village below, the church steeple is almost invisible against the sky. Snow gathers along its small ledges. The church door is closed. A path to it has been walked earlier but is now fading beneath the snow. Near the square, a cart stands beside a wall, its wooden wheel half buried. A bicycle leans under an overhang, its frame silvered with frost. A cat moves briefly along the base of a building, places each paw carefully in the snow, then slips through a gap into a warmer place. The village sleeps around it. A lantern burns in one window where someone has stayed awake too long. Perhaps a nurse, perhaps a mother, perhaps an old man who cannot sleep. The light is covered and low. It does not spill far. It is only a faint honey-coloured shape behind cloth. The forest hut and the village are connected by the road, but also by the same winter quiet. The same snow falls on both. The same cold presses at their doors. The same night asks people to speak softly. Inside the hut, Thomas takes the gloves from the line above the stove and tests them. Still damp at the fingertips. Better than before, not dry. Drier. He returns them to the line. One glove twists slightly, slowly, then stops. This tiny motion holds his attention for a moment. The glove turning in the warm air, the thread stretched above the stove, the orange glow on the black iron, the smell of wool becoming warmer. It is strange how, when a person is tired, small movements can feel very large. A flame leaning, steam curling, a glove turning, snow falling past the window, a sleeping man's hand relaxing. The mind no longer needs grand images. It can rest on small ones. Thomas sits back down, his eyes lower, not closed, only lowered. He hears the stove, the breath, the kettle, the wind, the silence after each sound. The silence after a sound is sometimes the deepest part. The tick, then silence, the breath, then silence, the faint wind, then silence, the snow on the roof, then silence. He begins to feel the rhythm of the hut the way a sailor feels a ship or a guard feels a corridor. Every place at night has a rhythm. This hut's rhythm is slow and wooden and warm at the centre. The Ardennes Forest outside has another rhythm, colder and wider, made of snow, branches and hidden streams under ice. The village has another, made of sleeping houses, banked fires, animals shifting in straw, and old walls holding the day's last warmth. All these rhythms exist together. None of them hurry. The listener does not need to hurry either. A little later, Ellis wakes just enough to ask the time. His voice is rough with sleep. Thomas answers softly. Ellis does not sit up. He only nods under the blanket, or perhaps the movement is only imagined in the dim light. Not yet, Thomas says. Sleep a little longer. Ellis accepts this without argument. His eyes close again. His breathing returns to its slow pattern. Thomas feels a quiet satisfaction at having given him more rest. In a hard winter night, allowing another person to sleep can feel like a meaningful act. No one will record it. No one will praise it. But it matters. The stove is fed with one small piece of wood. Thomas does it carefully. He opens the stove door only enough. A brief glow lights the room from below, touching the underside of the table, the legs of the chairs, the melting snow near the boots, the edge of Ellis's blanket. The fire shifts, accepts the wood, and settles. Thomas closes the door gently. The iron latch makes a small sound. The warmth remains. The light returns to low amber. The room resumes its shape. There is something calming about tending a stove. It gives the hands a purpose and the mind a simple result. Wood added, door closed, heat continuing, the action is complete, no more thought needed. Thomas wipes his fingers on a cloth and sits again. The coffee's finally finished. He turns the mug upside down on the table to show himself that he is done with it for now. The gesture is unnecessary but satisfying. Outside, the snow begins to fall more lightly. The flakes are smaller now. They move slowly in the air. The road is nearly smooth. The earlier tracks are fading. By morning, Unless more wheels pass, the road may look almost untouched. The thought gives Thomas a strange comfort, not because he wants the world erased, but because the snow's softness reminds him that even hard ground can be covered for a while. Even harsh shapes can be softened. Even a war winter can contain a quiet room with a stove. He does not say this aloud. He would not phrase it that way. He only watches the curtain where the pale edge of snowlight remains. The night continues. The hut remains small. The forest remains vast. The sleeping man sleeps. The waking man keeps watch. And around both of them, the Ardennes holds its midnight stillness, deep, blue, white, and slow. The story stays here, in this first long stretch of winter, because there is no need to move quickly. The road will still be there later, the village will still be there, the trees will continue standing, the stove will continue ticking, the lamp will continue glowing. For now, all that matters is the quiet centre of the night. A wool coat over tired shoulders, a pencil inside a notebook, a map folded away from the flame, a pair of boots melting snow into a pan, a blanket rising and falling with a sleeping chest, a kettle breathing softly near the stove, snow falling outside, covering the road, covering the forest, covering the world in a gentler shape. And you, listening now, do not need to do anything. You may rest with the same quiet. You may let the hut become only warmth, let the forest become only snow, let the village become only distant amber windows. Let the map become only paper. Let the stove become only rhythm. Let the sleeping man sleep. Let the waking man watch. Let the night pass slowly. Nothing sudden, nothing sharp. Only midnight in the Ardennes. Only snow. Only wool. Only low fire. Only soft breath. Only the long, calm winter dark. The road below the hut remains quiet for a long time. It curves away between the trees, pale under the snow, disappearing into darkness where the forest thickens and the branches meet overhead. In daylight, the road would look ordinary, perhaps even plain. A narrow winter road through the Ardennes, lined with fir, beech, and old stone walls nearly hidden by moss and snow. But at midnight, under the low sky, it has become something softer and more mysterious. It seems less like a road for vehicles and more like a path through a dream. The tracks that were sharp earlier in the evening have blurred. The boot prints near the hut have softened at the edges. The snow has not erased them completely. It has only made them quieter. Thomas sits for a while without writing. The notebook rests closed beneath his hand. He is not asleep, but his thoughts have slowed enough that they no longer form clear sentences. They come as images. The road, the stove, the village roofs, the gloves turning slightly above the heat, Ellis asleep on the bench, the amber light caught in the coffee stains on the table, a small line of snow at the bottom of the door. The world has narrowed to a few objects and a few sounds, and that narrowing feels almost kind. Every now and then he lifts his head and listens. Nothing. Only the hut. Only the winter. Only the breath of the sleeping man. When nothing happens for long enough, a person begins to hear the quieter layers beneath silence. The faint settling of ashes inside the stove. The small pull of wind around the chimney. The soft contraction of old boards in the cold. The tiny, irregular tapping of moisture in the pan near the boots. The whisper of snow against the window shutter. None of these sounds asks anything from him. They are only present. They keep him company in a way that does not require conversation. He reaches for the candle stub on the table and turns it between his fingers, though he does not light it. The wax is uneven. There is a little blackness near the wick. It has been used many nights before this one, perhaps by people who sat in the same room for very different reasons. A forester sharpening a knife, a villager repairing a harness, a boy waiting out a storm, a woodcutter warming his hands. The hut has held many midnights. This is only one. The thought settles gently in him. The war feels large when one looks at maps, but a hut feels older than war. Stone walls, wooden beams, smoke stains, a nail in the wall, a bench polished by years of sitting, a door swollen by dampness and winter. These things have known many seasons and will know more. Thomas places the candle back beside the notebook. He adjusts the lamp again, barely touching it, not because it needs adjusting, but because his hands want a small task. The flame steadies. The shadows steady with it. Ellis sleeps on. Outside, the forest deepens. Snow has a way of making distance uncertain. A tree 10 yards away may look like a shape from a dream. A road bend may seem farther than it is. A hollow between two hills may hold a darkness that feels almost like water. The Ardennes at night is not flat. It rises and sinks in long wooded waves. Ridges, ravines, streams, old paths, hidden meadows, and stone farms tucked into folds of land. The snow lies over all of it now, making the hills softer, rounding the rocks, turning broken ground into smooth white surfaces. Here and there the wind has pushed snow into shallow drifts along roots and walls. Here and there branches have kept the ground dark beneath them. A fox moves through one of those darker places. It is quiet enough to belong to the night completely. It places its paws carefully, nose low, tail level. It pauses near the road, listens and then crosses. Its prints mark the snow in a fine line that will be partly covered before morning. No human sees it. No one writes it down. But the forest holds the small passage. For a few breaths, the fox exists at the centre of the world. Then it vanishes beneath the trees. The road returns to stillness. Farther down, near the village, a wooden sign leans under a cap of snow. Its letters, if there are letters, are hidden now. The sign points toward a place that is sleeping. A chapel. A mill. A farm lane. A road to another village. At night, names matter less. The places themselves remain, whether named or not. Stone, field, stream, bridge, roof, door. Snow makes them equal for a while. Snow gives the world a common covering. In the village, one lamp remains faintly visible in an upstairs room. Behind the curtain, an old man sits awake in a chair with a blanket over his knees. He is not ill. He is not frightened. He is simply awake, as old people sometimes are in the deep night. The fire has burned low, and the room is full of the soft scent of ash. On the table beside him are a cup, a folded newspaper, and a small wooden box. He does not read. He listens, not for anything in particular, only to the night that has surrounded his village. He hears the house settle. He hears a beam creak. He hears the faint shifting of the cow below in the stable. He hears, or thinks he hears, snow sliding from the edge of the roof. He has heard nights like this before. Different years, different winters, different worries. The same old cold around the stones. He pulls the blanket higher on his knees and lets his eyes close. The lamp burns low behind the curtain. Its light, seen from the street, is hardly more than a warm breath. Back in the forest hut, Thomas opens the notebook again, because the act of opening it helps him stay awake. The page is lined, though the lines are faint in the lamplight. He writes the hour. Then he adds a few words. Snow lighter now, road quiet. Stove holding. He pauses over the last phrase and nearly smiles. Stove holding. It sounds like a report, but also like a prayer. The stove is holding. The room is holding. The night is holding. He closes the notebook again. Ellis turns on the bench. The blanket slips from one shoulder. Thomas rises quietly and crosses to him. He takes the blanket edge and lifts it back into place, careful not to wake him. Ellis murmurs something without meaning. A word, perhaps, or only a sound. Thomas waits until his breathing becomes even again. Then he returns to the table. This is the kind of moment no one ever mentions later. A blanket replaced on a sleeping shoulder. A gesture so small that it almost disappears as it happens. But inside a hard winter, small gestures can carry great warmth. Thomas sits down with a slower breath. His own tiredness is beginning to gather more heavily. He feels it behind the eyes first, then in the back of the neck, then in the hands, which seem to rest more fully on the table than before. He's not yet allowed to sleep. But tiredness, when accepted rather than resisted angrily, can become calm. He lets it be there. He does not fight it with sharp thoughts. He does not shake himself awake dramatically. He only sits a little straighter, takes a little breath, and returns his attention to the room. The stove, the door, the window, the sleeping man, the notebook, the lamp, small anchors. A watch can be kept by returning to small anchors. The candle, the cup, the map, the gloves, the boots, the pan beneath the boots, the line of snow at the door, the sound of the chimney. He names them silently, not in a hurry, and the room becomes clear again. Outside, the snow has nearly stopped. A few flakes still fall, but they are sparse now, drifting separately through the air. The clouds remain thick. The moon is hidden. The night is neither bright nor completely dark. Snowlight comes from everywhere and nowhere. It rises from the ground more than it falls from the sky. The forest floor glows faintly between the trunks. The road looks pale enough to follow, but not bright enough to reveal much distance. The hut's window, covered from within, shows only a small amber seam around the curtain. Inside that seam is warmth. Outside it is winter. A mile away, a stream moves beneath a thin crust of ice. Most of it is hidden. Only in one place, where water runs faster over stones, does the surface remain open. There, the water makes a low, steady sound. Not loud enough to reach the hut, not loud enough to reach the village, but present in the night. It passes under roots, under snow-covered banks, under a small bridge made of old stones. The stream does what streams do, continuing through winter because it has always continued. The war above its valley does not stop it. Snow does not stop it. Night does not stop it. It carries small pieces of ice and dark water toward lower ground. If the story could place a lantern there, the light would show black water, white edges, and the faint mist rising where cold air meets motion. But no lantern is there, only the stream, only the dark, only the quiet movement hidden in the forest. Thomas cannot hear the stream, but he might know it exists from the map. A blue line, perhaps, crossing the road below the village. On paper, it is simple. In the world, it is cold water under ice, stones smoothed by years, wet roots, and a bridge with snow on its parapet. The map is useful, but the world is always richer than the map. He rubs one thumb along the edge of the paper and feels how soft the map has become at the fold. Then he folds it a little smaller and sets it aside. The table looks emptier without the map spread wide. That emptiness is restful. The lamp's pool of light now holds only the notebook, the pencil, the mugs, the candle, and Thomas's hands. A smaller world than before, a calmer world. Ellis breathes steadily. The stove holds. Thomas decides to stand for a moment, because standing can wake the body gently. He does not want to disturb the room, so he moves slowly. The chair lifts with a small wooden sigh. He pauses, then steps toward the door. The boots near the pan are not his. His own boots are on his feet, the leather stiff from cold but no longer wet at the surface. He rolls his shoulders beneath the coat, he flexes his fingers, he looks at the gloves again. Still damp, always damp. He almost laughs silently at that. In winter, dry things are dreams. Dry socks, dry gloves, dry wood, dry paper, dry air. Each is a little luxury. The hut has a small shelf near the door. On it are a few objects left by others or gathered over time. A tin box, a piece of folded cloth, a coil of string, a knife with a worn handle, a few nails, a chipped cup no one uses because the crack runs too deep. These objects belong to no one in particular. They belong to the hut. Thomas touches the coil of string and then withdraws his hand. He is only passing time now, but in a gentle way. Passing time is not always wasting it. Sometimes passing time is the work. Waiting calmly is the work. Keeping the room warm is the work. Letting the sleeper sleep is the work. He returns to the stove and checks the fire through the little door. The wood has caught properly. The glow is low but steady. No more is needed. If he adds too much, the room will smoke. If he adds too little, the cold will creep in. The right amount is always small. The right amount is always learned. Thomas closes the stove door again. The iron radiates heat against his shins. He stands there for a few seconds, letting the warmth enter his legs. It is a humble pleasure. No one would write about it. But he feels grateful for it. The warmth at the front of the legs, the cold at the back, the smell of smoke, the soft light, the room sleeping around him. He goes back to the chair and sits. His eyelids are heavy now, but he has passed through the sharp edge of sleepiness into a slower state. A person can become very tired and very calm at the same time. The body stops asking for comfort and begins to accept what exists. Hard chair, warm mug, low fire, dim lamp, snow outside, friend sleeping, quiet road. Enough. The night is still long but not endless. Far away, somewhere beyond the ridges, other people are awake in other shelters. A nurse in a dim room folds a blanket over a chair. A driver sleeps in a parked truck beneath a canvas cover. A village woman kneads dough before dawn because bread takes time. A sentry under a tree stamps his feet carefully to warm them without making much noise. A clerk in another hut writes in another notebook. A horse in a stable breathes steam into the dark. A child turns in sleep. A stove burns low. A kettle waits. The Ardennes is full of small, quiet lives under snow. The story does not need to visit each one. It is enough to know they are there. The forest does not sleep the way people sleep. It rests with one eye open. Branches hold snow until they cannot, then release it softly. Ice forms at the edges of puddles. The hidden stream moves. The fox continues its path. An owl turns its head. The trunks stand. The roots wait underground. Snow on the needles of the fir trees makes the branches droop like tired shoulders. In some places, the dark green shows through. In others, the white is complete. When wind passes, the branches murmur to one another in a language older than any human story. Inside the hut, that murmur reaches Thomas only faintly. He hears it as a low sound at the edge of awareness. The forest speaking in sleep. The lamp flame leans slightly. The smoke in the chimney changes. Then the murmur fades. Thomas places both hands flat on the table and feels the grain of the wood. The table is rough. There is a deep mark near one edge, perhaps from a knife. There are rings from cups, a burn mark from some older flame, a groove where the pencil has run too often. The table has served many people and asks nothing in return except to remain standing. Objects like this can be comforting. They do not explain. They do not judge. The table has served many people and asks nothing in return except to remain standing. Objects like this can be comforting. They do not explain, they do not judge. They simply hold what is placed upon them. A mug, a hand, a candle, a little weight of tiredness. The table holds all of it. Thomas lowers his head for a moment, not sleeping, only resting his eyes. The darkness behind his eyelids is warm and orange from the lamp. He sees the shape of the flame even with his eyes closed. He hears Ellis breathing. He hears the stove. He hears the faint snowmelt in the pan near the door. He lets 3 slow breaths pass. Then he opens his eyes again. The room is exactly as it was. That sameness is reassuring. A night watch is often made of returning to the same room again and again. One closes the eyes for a breath, opens them. The stove remains. The map remains. The sleeping man remains. The door remains closed. The world has not shifted while the eyes were resting. Thomas reaches for the mug again, forgetting for a moment that it is empty. He finds only the cool enamel under his fingers. He turns it upright, considers making more coffee, then decides not yet. The next cup should be later. A person on watch learns to ration small comforts, not only food and coffee. Attention too. Warmth too. The pleasure of standing by the stove. The little movement of writing the hour. The check through the curtain. If everything is done too soon, the night becomes wide again. So he waits. Waiting is a skill. Waiting can be clumsy at first, full of impatience and restless hands. But after enough nights, waiting becomes quieter. It becomes the ability to sit with time without always pulling at it. Thomas has learned some of this, though not all. He is still young enough to want morning to arrive, but tired enough to know it cannot be hurried. The clock on the shelf, an old travel clock with a cracked face, ticks softly. It is not perfectly accurate, no one trusts it completely. Still, its ticking gives the room a shape, a small, repeated proof that time is moving. Tick, tick, tick. Each sound is faint beneath the stove and wind, but when Thomas listens for it, he can hear it. The clock's hands move through the night with quiet confidence. They do not care about snow. They do not care about maps. They do not care about fear or hope. They only move. There is comfort in the indifference of a clock. It carries minutes whether or not a person is ready. Thomas looks toward Ellis again. Still asleep. The blanket is still in place. Good. Outside, the road is still empty. The forest is still listening to itself. Good. The fire is still low and steady. Good. He thinks the word good without emotion, only as a small acknowledgement. Good. 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 Enough. A little while later, he stands and takes the kettle from near the stove. The handle is warm but not too hot. He pours water carefully into the mug. The sound is soft and intimate, water entering enamel in the dim room. He adds a pinch of coffee from the tin and stirs once. Only once. The spoon touches the side of the mug with the faintest click. Ellis does not wake. The steam rises more clearly this time. Thomas takes the mug in both hands and stands near the stove while he drinks. Not quickly. A small sip, a pause, another sip. The bitterness spreads through his mouth and into his throat. It is not fine coffee. It may hardly deserve the name, but it is warm, and warmth is the language the body understands best at this hour. The room has begun to feel almost outside of time. The longer Thomas sits in it, the more the war beyond the forest seems to shrink into something distant and abstract. Not gone, not forgotten, only held away by stone walls, snow, and the ritual of small tasks. The mind can only live fully in one room at a time. Here, the room is simple. Fire. Lamp, bench, door. Table. Window. Snow. Sleep. The story allows the room to be enough. Beyond the hut, the village remains quiet beneath its white roofs. The old man upstairs has fallen asleep in his chair. His lamp still burns, very low, making a small shape of warmth behind the curtain. The old woman in the stone house has not woken again. The children remain under their layered blankets, warm in the protected hollow of sleep. In the stable, the cow shifts once more and then lowers her head. A little frost forms along the inside of one window. The street outside is empty. The bicycle under the overhang carries a line of snow along its frame. The cartwheel is almost covered now. The well in the square is a dark circle under a little roof of white. Even the church steeple seems to sleep. If the bell were to ring, the sound would travel strangely through the snow, soft at the edges, carried down the street and into the forest. But the bell does not ring. The village keeps its silence. At the edge of the square, a bakery oven that was lit earlier has cooled to a deep warmth inside the bricks. The baker will return before full morning. For now, the room is dark, with sacks leaning against the wall and flour dust resting on the table. A wooden peel hangs from a hook. A cloth covers the dough. The smell of yeast, ash, and old bread lingers. No one is there to smell it, yet the smell remains, waiting. Houses and shops hold the memory of people while they sleep. The hut holds Thomas and Ellis. The bakery holds tomorrow's bread. The stable holds warm animal breath. The church holds old stone cold. The whole village holds its breath under snow. Thomas thinks of bread suddenly, not because he is hungry in any sharp way, but because the smell of coffee and the sight of the tin plate bring food to mind. There is a piece of dark bread wrapped in cloth on the shelf. He takes it quietly. The bread is dense and a little dry. He breaks off a small piece rather than cutting it. The sound of the crust is louder than expected, so he pauses and looks at Ellis. Still asleep. Thomas chews slowly. The bread tastes of rye, smoke and storage. It is plain. It is good. It steadies the body. He takes one more small piece and wraps the rest again. It must last. Everything must last. The wood, the coffee, the bread, the lamp oil, the patience. But patience, unlike bread, can sometimes grow as it is used. The more gently a person waits, the more possible waiting becomes. Thomas returns the bread to the shelf and sits again. The notebook lies open now, though he does not remember opening it. He looks at the blank space under the last line. For a moment he considers writing something more personal. Not a report, not a note about snow or road or stove. Something like, "Very quiet tonight." But he does not write it. The quiet is too large for the page and too simple for words. He leaves the space blank. Blank space can say enough. The lamp flame lowers a little. He checks the oil, enough for the rest of the watch if kept low. He turns the wick down by the smallest amount. The room darkens again. The corners become deeper. Ellis becomes more of a shape than a person, wrapped in blanket and shadow. The table remains visible. The notebook. The mug. The candle. The pencil. Thomas's hands. Outside, the forest no longer shows through the window curtain, except as a pale edge of snowlight. The hut becomes almost entirely interior. A small amber world suspended in winter. For a listener, this is a good place to rest. You may imagine sitting not in the chair, but somewhere softer, only observing. You do not have to keep the watch. Thomas keeps it. You do not have to tend the stove. Thomas tends it. You do not have to listen to the road. Thomas listens. You may simply receive the warmth of the scene, the glow of the lamp, the sound of the stove, the hush of snow outside, the idea of a blanket, the thought of an old stone village sleeping under winter clouds. Nothing here needs to be solved. The night is being carried, and you may let it carry you. Thomas leans back and lets his eyes rest on the ceiling beams. They are dark, smoke-stained, irregular. One beam has a crack running nearly its full length, but it has held for many years. Another has a small nail hammered into it, perhaps once used to hang a lantern or a strip of drying herbs. The ceiling is low enough that the room feels close, sheltered. In summer, it might feel cramped. In winter, it feels protective. The low ceiling keeps the warmth near. The walls keep the wind out. The smallness of the room becomes part of its kindness. Outside, the Ardennes is wide, wooded and cold. Inside, everything is close enough to touch. A person can live more easily inside what is close. A mug, a stove, a table, a bench, a sleeping companion, a door that holds, a lamp that burns. Thomas listens again. This time he hears something different, or thinks he does. A very faint sound from the road, not near, not urgent. A soft rhythm, perhaps snow dropping from branches, perhaps the distant movement of hooves, perhaps only the mind making patterns from silence. He sits still. Ellis remains asleep. The sound fades. After a while, Thomas decides it was the forest. At night, the forest has many ways to sound like someone approaching, and no one approaching at all. He writes nothing. A calm watch does not turn every uncertainty into a report. He takes another slow sip of coffee. The warmth is fading but still present. The road remains empty. The hut remains still. A little ash settles inside the stove, shifting softly. That is all. Hours like this have a strange tenderness because they ask so little and so much at the same time. They ask only that a person stay awake, only that he keep a fire, only that he listen now and then, only that he write the hour. But to a tired body, staying awake can feel like carrying a heavy bundle through snow. Thomas carries it quietly. He does not think of himself as brave. He is simply awake because it is his turn, and turns are one of the ways people survive together. One sleeps, one watches. Later, the watcher sleeps. Later, another watches. The arrangement is simple and ancient, older than uniforms, older than maps, older than war. A watch beside a fire while others sleep. The image belongs to all human history. The hut is only one version of it. Thomas rises once more and checks the boots near the door. The snow has nearly melted from them. The pan holds a shallow pool of cold water. He lifts the boots slightly and moves the pan closer to the stove, careful not to spill. The water slides within it, making a faint sound like a miniature lake. He He smiles at the thought. A lake in a pan. The Ardennes reduced to water under boots. He sets the pan down. The heat will keep the puddle from freezing near the door. He wipes his fingers on the cloth. The cloth is damp, but it is the only cloth. Damp is better than dirty. Again, degrees. The war has made many things into degrees. Warm enough, dry enough, quiet enough, fed enough, rested enough, hopeful enough. The phrase might sound poor in another life, but here it has strength. Enough means the night continues, enough means morning may come, enough means the body can endure the next hour without needing to understand the whole future. The story returns often to enough because enough is soothing. It does not demand perfection. It does not ask for completion. It only says, this moment can be lived. This breath can be taken. This warmth can be felt. This silence can hold. Thomas sits again and listens to Ellis sleep. Ellis's breathing has deepened. There is a small roughness in it from the cold air, but no distress. The blanket rises, falls, rises, falls. A person asleep under a blanket changes the mood of a room. It makes the room responsible. The stove becomes not only a stove, but a guardian of warmth. The lamp becomes not only light, but a promise not to wake too harshly. The chair becomes not only a chair, but a post of quiet attention. Thomas feels this without naming it. He lowers his movements further. He places the mug down more softly. He turns pages carefully. He walks with a slower heel. The room becomes a small shelter built around sleep. Outside, clouds begin to thin in a narrow place above the trees. The moon, still hidden but stronger now, brightens the snow. A faint blue light gathers on the road. The trunks become clearer. The hut roof shines softly where snow has settled thickest. The village roofs below catch the same pale light, though no one wakes to see it. The road between hut and village becomes a ribbon of dim white. The forest seems to hold its breath under the moon. For a moment, the whole Ardennes night appears almost peaceful enough to belong to another century, before the war, before the vehicles, before the maps on the table. Only trees, snow, stone houses, smoke, a road, a winter moon. Then the clouds move again, and the light softens. Thomas, inside, notices only that the curtain edge has grown slightly brighter. He stands and looks through the small gap once more. The cold touches his face this time. He sees the road more clearly, still empty. The trees look silvered now. The snow has stopped falling. The world outside seems newly made. He lets himself look a little longer than necessary. There is no sound, no movement, just the forest and the road. He lowers the curtain. The room feels warmer when he turns back. This is one of winter's pleasures, returning from cold even if one has only looked at it. The stove seems kinder, the lamp seems richer, the blanket over Ellis seems heavier and better. Thomas warms his fingers around the mug. The coffee is almost gone again. He decides not to make more until Ellis wakes. It is better that way. They can share the next cup perhaps, or Ellis can have it strong. The thought gives Thomas something small to anticipate. Small anticipation is useful. Not morning, not home, not the end of the war, only the next cup, the next piece of wood, the next line in the notebook, the next soft check of the road. A tired mind can hold these. Large hopes are sometimes too bright for midnight. Small hopes glow more gently. The notebook receives another line. Moon behind clouds, road clear, no movement. He hesitates, then adds, Ellis sleeping. This is not an official kind of note, and he knows it, but the page feels warmer with it there. Ellis sleeping, a fact, a success, a small record of rest protected for a little longer. Thomas looks at the words and then closes the notebook. In the future, perhaps no one will read them. Perhaps the notebook will be lost or burned or left in a drawer somewhere. Perhaps the page will survive and no one will understand why those two words matter, but they matter tonight. That is enough. The sound of the stove has changed slightly because the wood has settled. Thomas opens the door carefully and nudges the piece with a poker. Sparks shift inside but do not leap out. The glow brightens. He closes the door. Heat strengthens in the room. Ellis murmurs again, then sleeps on. The kettle begins a faint whisper. not boiling, only remembering heat. Thomas places his hands near the stove without touching it. The skin feels the warmth first, then the bones, or so it seems. Cold is not only on the surface after a long night, it enters gradually and leaves gradually. Warmth must persuade it out. The stove persuades slowly. Thomas lets it. There is a small stack of letters in his coat pocket. He has not read them tonight. Reading letters at midnight can be dangerous in a quiet way, not because of the letters themselves, but because they open doors in the mind that may be difficult to close before a watch is done. A kitchen door, a mother's handwriting, a street name, a joke from a friend, a question about when he will return. Some doors are too bright for the middle of the night, so the letters remain folded in the pocket. Their presence is enough, like bread on a shelf, like a candle unlit, like a road under snow. Things do not need to be used to give comfort. Sometimes they comfort by waiting. In the village, the old man's lamp finally goes out. The upstairs window becomes dark. Now only one faint glow remains near the stable, where a covered lantern hangs low. The village seems even more asleep. Smoke from chimneys rises straight for a while, then bends with a higher wind. The roofs are white. The street is blue-grey. The bicycle has become part of the wall. The well has become part of the square. The square has become part of the snow. The snow has become part of the night. Everything belongs. Thomas does not see the village now, but he can imagine it. He passed through earlier, before the light faded completely. He remembers the narrow street, the old stones, the woman carrying a bucket, the smell of smoke, the closed shutters, the way children watched from a doorway until someone called them back inside. At night, the memory of the village is gentler than the village itself was. Memory edits the cold out a little. It leaves lamplight. It leaves breath in the air. It leaves the sound of boots on snow. He wonders if the bakery will open before dawn. Then he lets the thought go. The watch is still the hut. The stove, the road, the sleeping man. He returns to these. A gust of wind moves across the roof, brushing loose snow from the edge. Some of it falls near the door with a soft thump. Ellis wakes slightly. Thomas says quietly, "Only snow." Ellis makes a low sound and settles again. Only snow. The phrase comforts them both. Only snow means the world remains in its ordinary winter language. Only snow means no need to rise. Only snow means the watch continues as before. Thomas repeats it silently once. Only snow. The listener may take the phrase too. If a thought comes, perhaps it is only snow. If a distant worry taps at the edge of the mind, perhaps it is only snow sliding from a roof in a quiet forest. Something that can be heard, acknowledged, and allowed to pass. Only snow, only wind, only a stove ticking, only a breath. The story grows slower now as the night grows deeper into itself. The first alertness of midnight has gone. The last part before dawn has not yet begun. This is the wide middle, where hours feel almost circular. Thomas has written, he has listened, he has warmed the stove, he has checked the road, he has let Ellis sleep, he has taken bread, he has touched the map, he has watched the lamp, and now the same things return softer each time. Notebook, stove, road, breath, lamp, snow, notebook, stove, road, breath, lamp, snow. Repetition is not failure here. It is the shape of waiting. It is the shape of sleep. Outside the hut, the moonlight grows and fades as clouds pass. The forest appears and disappears in layers. A trunk becomes visible, then darkens. A branch shines, then returns to shadow. Snow on the road glows, then dulls. This slow breathing of light makes the forest seem alive in a quiet way. Not alive with danger, alive with weather, alive with age, alive with winter. The hut remains a small amber point within it. Thomas remains at the table. Ellis remains on the bench. The stove remains between them and the cold. The map, folded now, rests near the wall. Without it open, the room feels less connected to distant places. This is good. For a while, the story does not need distant places. It needs nearness. The mug within reach, the pencil within reach, the stove within reach, the blanket within reach, the door within reach. The body can rest better when the world is near. Too much distance keeps the mind awake. Nearness lets it soften. Thomas places his elbows on the table and interlaces his fingers, then releases them because the posture feels too tense. He lays his hands flat instead. The wood grain under his palms is uneven. He follows one line in the grain with his eyes. It runs from a knot near the edge toward the centre, bends around an old mark, and disappears beneath the notebook. A small road in wood, a path inside the table. His tired mind finds this mildly interesting. Then even that interest fades. The stove ticks. The lamp glows. The snow holds the road. Ellis sleeps. The watch continues. Somewhere far away beyond the forest, beyond the ridges, beyond the small human circle of this hut, history continues its heavy movement. But it is not invited into the room tonight. Not directly. This story chooses the quieter truth. That even inside a difficult winter there were moments of stillness. That even under pressure people wrapped hands around warm mugs. That even near maps and uncertain roads, someone replaced a blanket on a sleeping shoulder. That the human heart can make small shelters out of very little. A flame, a bench, a cup, a friend asleep, a line in a notebook. These small shelters matter. For the listener, the hut may become such a shelter. You may imagine the walls around it. Thick stone, old mortar, snow outside, a roof holding white weight, a door latched against the cold, a stove in the corner, a lamp turned low, a table with a notebook, a man keeping watch so another may sleep. Nothing sharp, nothing sudden, only the simple rhythm of winter patience. Thomas's eyes grow heavy again. He stands before they can close too long. This time he walks slowly from one side of the hut to the other. Only a few steps are possible. Door to stove, stove to table, table to window, window to bench, bench to door, a small circuit. He makes it once, then again, not marching, only moving enough to remain awake. The floorboards creak, but softly. Ellis remains asleep. The lamp flame follows him in small shifting shadows. His coat moves heavily around his knees. At the window he pauses without lifting the curtain. He can feel the cold through the cloth. The forest presses close outside, not physically, but in the imagination. So many trees, so much snow, so much night. He leaves the curtain untouched and returns to the stove. The room is better than the view for now. The fire is lower. He adds one more small piece of wood. Again, the brief opening of the orange light. Again, the smell of smoke. Again, the stove door closing. A repeated action can become deeply calming because it proves the world is still understandable. Wood burns, heat rises, a kettle warms, snow melts, a sleeping man breathes, a clock ticks. The mind does not have to solve these things, it only has to let them be true. Thomas sits and makes another note only because it is time. The writing is less neat now. His hand is tired, the pencil has dulled. He does not sharpen it yet. The line is readable enough. Enough again. The pages become a quiet record of an uneventful night, and an uneventful night is exactly what he wants. The word uneventful can sound dull, but in a winter war, uneventful is generous. Uneventful means no one wakes too quickly. Uneventful means the stove remains the loudest thing in the room. Uneventful means snow, breath, and time. He underlines nothing. He closes the book. The sound of the cover is soft. A little later, Ellis wakes more fully, not suddenly. His breathing changes first, then he shifts under the blanket, then his hand moves to the edge of his cap. He lifts it from his eyes and blinks into the amber room. For a moment, he looks at the stove, the table, Thomas, the window, as if discovering the world again piece by piece. "What time is it?" he asks quietly. Thomas tells him. Ellis nods and sits up slowly. The blanket falls around his shoulders. His face is creased from sleep. His eyes are heavy but clearer than before. He rubs one hand over his jaw and exhales. The room changes now that he's awake. It does not become louder, only more inhabited. The watch is no longer held by one man alone. Thomas pours hot water into the mug and makes coffee for Ellis, a little stronger than his own. Ellis takes it with both hands and holds it close before drinking. For several moments, neither man speaks. This silence is different from the silence of one sleeping and one watching. It is companionable, shared. The stove ticks between them. The coffee steams. The window curtain shows the pale edge of snowlight. Ellis drinks, then says softly that it is cold. Thomas says yes, that is all. The exchange is complete. Some conversations need only one simple truth. It is cold. Yes, both men know the rest. They know the stove is good. They know the road has been quiet. They know the night is not over. They know the next hours will come in their own time. Ellis pulls the blanket more tightly around his shoulders and looks toward the notebook. Anything, he asks. Thomas shakes his head. Snow. Road quiet. Ellis nods again. This is good news, though no one celebrates it. Good news at night is often just the absence of bad news. A quiet road, a steady stove, a friend asleep long enough. The men sit together. The hut feels warmer with 2 awake bodies, though perhaps the temperature has not changed. Human presence changes a room. A second pair of eyes makes the forest outside feel less immense. A second breathing rhythm joins the stove. Ellis reaches for the bread and takes a small piece. He eats slowly, still waking. Thomas watches the lamp. The scene has become almost domestic. 2 men at a table, coffee, bread, a stove, snow outside. If not for the uniforms, if not for the map, if not for the winter of that particular year, it could be any old hut in any old forest. That thought, unspoken, brings a softness to the room. Ellis asks if the gloves are dry. Thomas says almost. They both look at the gloves. The fingertips still hang slightly heavy. Ellis gives a small, tired smile. Almost dry as a kind of miracle, he says. Thomas smiles too, quietly, not a laugh, only the warmth of shared understanding. In a damp winter hut, almost dry truly is worth noticing. The moment passes gently. No joke breaks the mood. No loudness enters. Only the small companionship of 2 tired people recognizing a small improvement. The gloves turn slightly in the rising heat. The lamp glows. The coffee steams. The hut, which had held 1 waking man and 1 sleeping man, now holds 2 waking men moving slowly toward the next part of the night. Thomas feels his tiredness more strongly now that Ellis is awake. It is as though the body had been waiting for permission to admit it. Ellis sees this and says he can take the table for a while. Thomas does not protest much. He gives the notebook, explains the last notes, gestures toward the road and the stove, and lowers himself onto the bench Ellis has left. The blanket is still warm. Warmth passed from one body to another, a humble exchange. Thomas pulls the blanket over his knees first, then over his shoulders. He does not intend to sleep deeply, only rest his eyes, only a few minutes. That is what tired people tell themselves when sleep is already near. Ellis sits at the table with the mug and the notebook. Now he is the watcher. Thomas is the one allowed to drift. The room has turned. The circle continues. Ellis looks at the last line. Road quiet. Ellis sleeping. He reads the second phrase and glances at Thomas, who is already leaning back, eyes closed. Ellis does not comment. He only lowers the lamp a fraction more. Another quiet kindness. Thomas feels the room dim through his eyelids. He hears the stove. He hears Ellis move the mug. He hears the pencil touch the page. He hears the winter at the walls. All the sounds that had kept him awake now begin to carry him towards sleep. This is how quickly a watch can change. The same room that demanded wakefulness becomes a room that offers rest. Nothing has changed except responsibility. Responsibility has moved from one pair of hands to another. Thomas lets it move. He does not hold on. The bench is hard beneath him, but the blanket is warm. His boots remain on. His neck is not perfectly comfortable, but he is no longer required to sit upright. That is enough. His breath slows. The hut blurs. The lamp becomes a soft shape. The stove becomes a pulse. Ellis becomes a quiet presence at the table. The snow outside becomes only whiteness in the mind. Thomas thinks of the road one more time, then loses it. He is not fully asleep yet. He is only at the edge. A pleasant edge. A place where thoughts begin but do not finish. Ellis listens to Thomas's breathing change. He recognizes the moment when rest begins. He keeps his movements soft. Now it is his turn to preserve the room. He writes the next time in the notebook. Then he adds, stove steady. He pauses. Then, perhaps because he saw the earlier line, he adds, Thomas resting. He closes the notebook. The 2 lines are simple, Ellis sleeping, Thomas resting. The night has become an exchange of rest, recorded quietly in pencil. Outside, the forest remains unchanged. The road remains empty. The village remains asleep. The moon remains behind moving clouds. The snow remains pale. The stream under ice continues. The fox is gone. The old man sleeps in his chair. The children remain warm under coats and blankets. The bakery waits for its early fire. The whole Ardennes night seems to rest in layers, one quiet thing inside another. The village inside the valley, the hut inside the forest, the men inside the hut, the breath inside the men, layer within layer, stillness within stillness. Ellis drinks his coffee and lets the warmth clear the last fog of sleep from his thoughts. He is not wide awake, but wide awake is not always needed. He is awake enough to keep the room. Awake enough to listen, awake enough to tend the stove, awake enough to let Thomas rest. He looks at the gloves and decides to move them slightly closer to the heat. Not too close. They should dry, not scorch. He adjusts them with care. The wool gives off a damp warmth. He returns to the table. The lamp shows the map folded to one side, the candle, the pencil, the old marks in the wood. All familiar, all quiet. The scene repeats in a new arrangement. One man resting, one man watching. The stove holding, the snow outside, the road quiet. The repetition becomes the story's heartbeat. If you are listening still, you may let the repetition soften you too. There is no need to remember whether Thomas or Ellis is at the table now. There is no need to keep track. Only know that someone is watching and someone is resting, that the fire is being tended, that the road is quiet, that the village sleeps, that snow has softened the world outside, that a cup is warm in someone's hands, that the night is still safe enough for slow breathing. Ellis leans closer to the lamp and studies the map for a moment, though not deeply. The lines are there if needed. The roads, the ridges, the stream, the village, the forest edge. But he does not need them now. He lets the map remain folded. The actual room is more important than the drawn one. The actual stove, the actual window, the actual road beyond the door. Maps are for movement. This hour is for staying. He hears Thomas shift under the blanket. Only once, then stillness. The bench creaks. The room settles again. Ellis writes nothing. The notebook can wait. Sometimes recording too much makes time feel heavier. He lets the page stay closed. The stove door glows faintly along its edges. The lamp flame leans. The snow light at the curtain grows a little brighter again as the moon passes through a thinner cloud. Ellis lifts the curtain just enough to look. The road is quiet. He sees the trees dark and silver. He sees the clean snow. He sees no movement. He lowers the curtain. Road quiet. The phrase has become as comforting as a lullaby. He does not need to say it aloud. The room knows. Thomas sleeps lightly now. Not deeply. Not enough to dream fully. Only enough for the body to release the sharpest edge of fatigue. His head rests awkwardly against the wall, but he does not mind. He will wake with a stiff neck, perhaps. That is a small future problem. For now, sleep has him. The blanket holds his warmth. The bench holds his weight. The hut holds the bench. The forest holds the hut. The snow holds the forest. The night holds all of it. Ellis sits in the amber circle and feels the quiet become larger. He is less thoughtful than Thomas, perhaps, or simply less inclined to put thoughts into words. He experiences the room through practical details. The stove needs one more piece of wood soon. The lamp has enough oil. The road remains quiet. The gloves are improving. The bread should last. Thomas is resting. Coffee is warm. This is his version of peace. A list of manageable facts. Each one checked. Each one sufficient. A clock ticks softly on the shelf. Ellis hears it now. He had not noticed it earlier. Tick, tick, tick. The sound is steady enough to fade into the stove's rhythm. He places the mug down and listens. The clock, the stove, Thomas, the wind, the hut, all different, all together. The middle of the night begins to loosen its grip at last, though dawn is still not visible. There is a subtle sense that the world is preparing far away, beneath the snow, behind the clouds. The village baker will wake soon. The old woman may rise to stir the embers. Animals will shift more often in the stables. The forest will grow a little paler, but not yet. This is still the protected hour before the first duties of morning, the hour when the body wants to sleep most deeply, the hour when every warm object matters. Ellis rests his forearms on the table and looks at the candle stub. He remembers, without choosing to, a candle on another table far from here, a room with a clean floor, a window without snow, someone humming softly while mending a shirt. The memory is gentle but too bright, so he lets it pass. He has learned not to follow certain memories too far during a watch. They can make the room feel colder when they leave. Better to remain with the stove, better to remain with the road, better to remain with Thomas sleeping and the notebook closed. The fire settles again. Ellis adds the small piece of wood. He does it slightly differently than Thomas, but just as carefully. The stove door opens. Orange light fills the room low and briefly. Thomas does not wake. The wood catches. The door closes. The hut returns to amber dimness. Ellis sits and warms his hands. He feels the small satisfaction of having done the right thing at the right time. A stove is simple, but it teaches timing. Too soon, waste. Too late, cold. Just enough, warmth continues. This lesson belongs to many things: coffee, lamp oil, speech, movement, thought. A calm night is often maintained by not doing too much, not speaking too much, not looking out too often, not feeding the fire too heavily, not opening the door without need, not letting the mind run too far beyond the walls. Ellis does not think this as a philosophy. He simply lives it. The story may think it for him, softly. Outside, the forest is beginning to sound different. Not louder, only more open. The snow has stopped, and with the falling no longer filling the air, the space between trees feels clearer. Occasionally snow drops from a branch. A small thud. Then silence. Another, farther away. Then silence. The clouds move. The moon appears briefly between them, pale and worn. It lays a soft light over the road and the roof of the hut. The chimney smoke becomes visible, a thin grey line bending slowly into the trees. Then the moon hides again, the road dims, the hut remains. Ellis looks toward the door and considers stepping outside. Only for a moment, only to breathe cold air and wake himself fully. But then he thinks of the warmth leaving the room when the door opens. He thinks of Thomas asleep. He decides against it. Some choices of comfort are also choices of kindness. The cold can stay outside. There is no need to invite it in. He takes the notebook and opens it. The page where Thomas wrote has a gentle unevenness, as if the pencil marks themselves are tired. Ellis writes the hour. Then, snow stopped. He stops there. The page does not need more. He closes it quietly. His handwriting is larger than Thomas's, less neat, still clear. Two hands sharing one record. The watch continues. In the village, the baker wakes before the sky changes. He does not want to wake, but his body knows the hour. He sits on the edge of his bed and listens. The house is cold. The room is dark. Beside him, his wife sleeps under blankets. He moves carefully so he will not disturb her. His feet find the floor. Cold rises through him immediately. He dresses by touch. Wool shirt, trousers, socks, coat. He descends the stairs slowly, one hand on the wall. The kitchen below smells of ash and flour. He opens the stove and finds embers. Good. He adds kindling. The first small flame appears. A new warmth begins in the village. Not bright enough to show outside much, not loud enough to wake the street, only enough to begin bread. The baker washes his hands in cold water, winces slightly, then dries them on a cloth. He works quietly. Flour on the table, dough under cloth, a wooden peel waiting, the oven slowly returning to life. This is not part of Thomas and Ellis's watch, and yet it belongs to the same night. Another person awake for ordinary duty, another small fire guarded against cold, another room becoming warm by human care. The village, the hut, and the forest are all held together by these small separate acts. The baker kneads slowly. The dough is heavy and cool at first, then more pliant. His hands know the work better than his thoughts do. He may be thinking of supplies, weather, neighbours, or nothing at all. The work continues. Bread has its own pace. It cannot be hurried beyond a certain point. Like morning, like healing, like sleep. Some things arrive only when their conditions have been met. Warmth, time, patience. In the hut, Ellis does not know the baker is awake. But soon, perhaps, the faint idea of morning will come from that direction. Not as light, but as smoke, as bread, as a village slowly remembering itself. For now, Ellis remains at the table. Thomas sleeps. The stove holds. The gloves are nearly dry. Almost dry has become nearly dry, and nearly dry is better. Ellis touches one fingertip of the glove. Warm, damp only deep in the wool. He leaves it. He looks at Thomas and decides to let him sleep until the next necessary moment. Not longer than duty allows, but not shorter either. The decision is small and exact. Kindness often is. The road outside the hut is still clear. The snow on it has hardened slightly in the cold. If someone walked there now, the sound would be crisp, but no one walks. No wheels turn, no horse passes, no voice comes up from the village. The road has become a pale line between sleeping trees. Ellis watches the curtain without lifting it, as if he can feel the road beyond. A person who keeps watch begins to sense the outside through the wall, not magically, only through attention. He knows the road is there. He knows the trees are there. He knows the cold is there. The door between them feels important. He is grateful for the door, grateful for the latch, grateful for hinges that hold, grateful for the rough threshold that keeps snow from sliding farther in. The body becomes grateful for practical things when the night is cold. In the room, Thomas's breathing has become deeper. He may be dreaming now. Perhaps he dreams of the hut itself, because tired minds often dream the place they are in. Perhaps in the dream, the stove is larger, the bench softer, the coffee warmer. Perhaps he dreams of walking the road after snow, finding not duty but home beyond the next bend. Or perhaps he dreams of nothing, and nothing is kinder. The story does not need to enter his dream. It lets him sleep in privacy. Ellis turns the pencil between his fingers and then sets it down. The sound is barely there. He folds his hands around the mug. The coffee has cooled. He drinks anyway. He has known colder. There is comfort in finishing what was poured. The mug empties. He places it upside down beside Thomas's. 2 empty mugs now. A small sign of time passed. Later there will be more coffee. Later, more notes. Later, another check of the road. Later, perhaps, a pale morning. For now, empty mugs and a steady stove are enough. The story may slow even more. It may spend a long time on one image. The stove door glowing faintly around its edges. The breath of a sleeping man. The curtain edge lit by snow. The gloves above the stove. The 2 mugs upside down on the table. The notebook closed. The pencil resting across it. The map folded at the side. The lamp turned low. Each object can hold the mind gently. You may choose one. The gloves, the mugs, the lamp, the stove, the snow. Let one image become the whole story for a few breaths. Let it be enough. The old stone hut continues to stand at the forest edge. Snow lies on its roof. Smoke leaves its chimney. The road curves past it. The forest leans close. Inside, the men keep their quiet exchange of waking and resting. Outside, the Ardennes waits under a slow winter sky. The night is not finished, but it is calmer now. It has been inhabited. It has been warmed. It has been written into a notebook in small pencil lines. It has been breathed through by sleeping and waking men. It has been softened by snow. And as the hours move on, almost invisibly, the story moves with them, toward a morning that will not arrive in a burst of light, but in pale degrees, in warmer coffee, in faint smoke from the village bakery, and in the simple knowledge that another long winter night has been carried gently from one side of darkness to the other.